All right, so the Chicago Bears are playing against the Houston Texans this Sunday night actually on prime time. So it is Caleb's first ever primetime game, and man, what a game he's gonna have to play against a very good Texans team, man. This one's gonna be a tough matchup. Obviously, we know that the Texans, ever since last year when they acquired CJ Stroud, just had a monstrous rookie season, a rookie season that's just almost impossible to replicate. And in some ways, it's kind of become sort of the standard, which is not, it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't expect all these rookies to now look like CJ Stroud, or else they're gonna be a bust. That's just not how it works. CJ Stroud is just an amazing quarterback, and man, the Bears defense, they played good last week, but we're gonna have a tough task on our hands if we're gonna be, wanting to beat this really good Texans team. And I'm not going to get into season stats so much just yet, not until like week 4 in terms of, the ranking against the pass or against the run, just because it's too early for that right now. We don't know how good or bad each team is against what just yet, just because we have such a small sample size. But just getting right into it here, just going over the Texans offense real quick. Obviously, we know CJ Stroud is a great QB. There's very little you can do to stop him once he gets going. And especially now that he has been surrounded by just amazing talent. I mean, the Texans went all in on just CJ Stroud, which, I mean, who can blame them? They're a really good team, a really good quarterback. So now they've got 3 good wide receivers, or 3 great wide receivers, honestly, and Stephon Diggs, who they acquired this past offseason, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And on top of that, they have a pretty solid tight end in Dalton Schultz. He may not be a Sam Laporta or Kelsey, but he's still good enough to get open. And then on top of that, adding Joe Mixon to the lineup. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little low on him, a little lower on him in the beginning of the season, just because he didn't do so well with the Bengals. But man, first week 1, and obviously, it's still week 1, so we can't overreact like crazy. But against Indy, he had 30 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown. So very good for your first game with a new team, kind of similar to how Saquon Barkley showed up for the Eagles. But you just have loads of weapons on offense, and honestly, the only weak spot on their offense is really their offensive line, which is in some ways pretty big, and especially for us who's going to want to get pressure on CJ Stroud. They're really the only good offensive lineman they have, and a really solid one they have is Laramie Tunsil, who shut down, if you guys remember last year against the Browns in the playoff game that they played against the Browns. Laramie Tunsil shut down Myles Garrett, who won Defensive Player of the Year last year. So he is no slouch. He's obviously one of the better left tackles in his league. But as for the rest of the offensive linemen, they have a lot of issues. Now, switching over to the defensive side of the ball for the Texans, they've got probably one of the best duos in terms of edge rushing in Will Anderson, who was Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, 3rd overall pick. And then Daniel Hunter, who they acquired in free agency from the Minnesota Vikings, who I don't know why the Vikings let him walk, but, I guess money issues. And Daniel Hunter goes back to, I believe, his hometown in Texas. I think he's from Houston, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, man, 2 really good edge rushers. Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones are going to have their work cut out for them. These guys are really good. Obviously, we know Will Anderson is a rising star in his league. Daniel Hunter, a little older, but still is very solid. I believe he had like 16.5 sacks last year. Didn't get home last week, but still a really good dude. And if he's not going to get sacks, he at least gets pressures a few times a game, which can be enough to cause interceptions, even some other sacks as well. And then in the secondary, they've got Derek Stingley, who last year was really good, but last week didn't play that good because he got burned by Alex Pierce, who I think went off for like 100-something yards last week. And it also was a really good throw by Anthony Richardson, but still a little struggling last week. I'm not going to say now that all of a sudden Derek Stingley is a terrible corner, because he was really good last year. One game doesn't make the difference here, and it's only week 1. So we're going to hold off on that, and I'm just going to assume that he's still the really good corner that he showed last year. So they have a decent, corner there, and really their strength is their run game. So last week they shut down Jonathan Taylor, and I say shut down in sort of like the sense of what Jonathan Taylor normally does, because last week he had 16 carries for 48 yards and 1 touchdown. Now that 1 touchdown obviously doesn't look good in numbers, but it does look good when you realize you shut down Jonathan Taylor for only 3 yards a carry. That is terrible if you're running back. You do not want that, especially for someone, like I said, Jonathan Taylor, who is arguably a top 5 running back in this league. I mean, that's really good to be able to shut him down for only 3 yards a carry. The only weakness, though, that I would say in their defense is the pass game. And last week, even though Anthony Richardson only had 9 completed passes. I believe he still passed for over 200 yards. And remember that long touchdown he had to Alex Pierce, who Alex Pierce isn't really, he's not like a top 20 wide receiver even. He's barely even like a top, I don't even know, top 50 maybe. And he still went off for over 100 yards against the Texans secondary. And now on to the Bears injury report here. I'm actually not going to go over like the offense and defense like I went last week. So we're just going to go off of who's going to play this week, which obviously the people who didn't get hurt are going to be playing. But for those who popped up on Friday's injury report, as of right now, Keenan Allen, to start off at the top of the list, has not practiced all week. Now, I get that he's 31, 32 years old, and he's on the older end. I know he's dealing with a heel injury, so, he kind of has that luxury to take off an entire week and still come out and play. So there is that possibility, but normally when a player is out for an entire week of practice, it's just not really likely that that player ends up playing, just because they're not in the scheme of things. And especially with Keenan Allen, he didn't really play a lot with Caleb in the preseason, and so that kind of worries me a little bit, just because they're not on the same chemistry level as maybe him and DJ Moore, or maybe him and Odunze. But honestly, the coaches know more than me, so maybe I'm completely wrong on that. I hope he plays, but maybe not to the extent to where we're going to see him 100%. I doubt he's going to be 100% even if he does play. So that is something to kind of be concerned about on that end for the receiver spot. And then for rookie Karan Amagaji, he's actually a full participant in Friday's practice, so I think that means he's going to play this week. But honestly, I would love to see him get some playing time. Nate Davis has been struggling, and I know PFF gave him a great grade last week, but if you watch the game, Nate Davis, what is new? The dude struggles. I say as soon as that man is struggling, put in the rookie, see what you got. Obviously, you're not going to throw in a third-round rookie and expect him to be, the next coming of Zach Martin or whatever, but he's got to do something that's better than this guy, right? I mean, we're paying Nate Davis $10 million a year to be just complete garbage, just be like a turnstile essentially. I want someone else in there, man. Ryan Bates is not playing, which kind of upsets me because I would want him in there instead of Coleman Shelton, because Shelton did terrible. Now for Shelton, this is your opportunity to do better than what you did last week and show why the Bears should keep you as a starting center. Because if you stink it up this week and Ryan Bates is healthy in week 3, I'd say start Ryan Bates. And for Kari Blasingame, he is out, so that kind of sucks. Kind of RIP the run game on that one, but we're gonna have to find other ways to run the ball. Even if you don't have your fullback, DeAndre Swift is still a good enough running back to where he can still get it done without a fullback. So we need to establish the run in this game too. And then for the most surprising part of the injury report for Friday is Rome Odunze. So if you guys remember earlier in the week, he popped up on the injury report after Sunday's game with an MCL injury, and people were fearing that he might have torn it. He could be out for the season. Then, reports show or scans show that it was only a sprain or whatever, and he'll be week to week. And that's kind of been the whole thing this entire week. But now we're seeing on Friday, he actually got in a limited practice, and he is questionable for this game. So there is a opportunity, there's a chance, I guess you could say, that Odunze plays. Now, I don't know for sure if I'd want Odunze to play. Maybe if Keenan Allen is actually in, I would sit the rookie. You don't want to risk him, making his injury worse, and if he's not 100%, just not making that aggravated and making that worse for him. But at the same time, we know that Odunze is a really tough guy, and at the end of the day, it's kind of going to be his call and the doctor's call. Now, some reports say that the doctors are saying that he's all good and he shouldn't have to worry about no injury, but if I'm Eberflus, I'm kind of weighing my options to see if we really need to put Odunze out there. It's going to be a tough game for us regardless, but even though we want to see him out there, not at the expense of him re-injuring himself and making it a long-term injury for him. Zach Pickens is back this week. I think he put in 2 straight days of full practice, so he should be good for Sunday. I'm really looking for a bounce back, second sophomore year for Zach Pickens, because he did terrible last year, man, and I really hope he steps up this year, because we honestly need more pieces on the D-line. And then DeMarcus Walker is questionable for this game, but he did participate fully in Friday's practice, so I think he's going to play. I think he'll be fine, and he did pretty solid last week against, it was a rookie left tackle, but he still did really solid, and I think he's going to continue that next week. Hopefully, maybe, he's going to be going against Laramie Tunsil, so maybe not, but, at least make some difference in the game when he's playing. Hopefully, we get some production out of him. And obviously, we know the Bears last week, we won against the Titans, but man, it was not a game that you would want or even expect, to be honest. The defense being the one that scores pretty much all our points and carries us to a victory. And even though that's great, even though our defense is amazing, We cannot rely on that in today's NFL. This is not the 1980s. We have to put up some sort of offense if you want to win games consistently. Having a good defense is great, but we need a good offense as well if we want to be a contending team in this league. So for the keys to beating Houston, man, it is going to be tough. It's going to be very tough, but there are some things to take advantage of to kind of make your chances of beating this really good Houston Texans team a lot easier. And one of those is getting pressure on CJ Stroud. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, but for this game specifically, like I mentioned earlier, the Texans offensive line isn't that good. And at least they didn't show last week that they were that good. They let up 4 sacks on CJ Stroud, and usually that's a recipe for disaster. And there's a reason why Indianapolis was within 2 points of tying / beating the Houston Texans. And those 4 sacks definitely hurt the Texans. And like I said, man, offensive line issues other than Lermy Tunsil, but their interior line was terrible. Their right tackle, Titus Howard, was god-awful last week. And Montez Sweat usually lines up against the right tackle. So if he takes advantage of a struggling right tackle, we could see a monstrous game from Montez Sweat this week, who didn't have a sack last week. But I think this is the game right here. I think he's going to get at least a sack, maybe even 2 on a right tackle who's been struggling so far. Like I said, it's only week 1, so we can't, say for sure that's going to be a main issue for, the offensive line. We'll see how they go against that. But our defensive line did do good last week against a, once again, bad Titans O-line last week. But Houston's not much better. So I think we have a chance to really get pressure on CJ Stroud. And if we do, our chances of winning definitely increases. Now for the second key to the game, do not let Joe Mixon get going. Last week, and one of the biggest reasons why, and probably even a bigger reason than CJ Stroud, but I would say the biggest reason why the Texans won that game is because Joe Mixon went absolutely nuclear. Like I said, almost 160 rushes on 30 attempts. Now, obviously, in today's era, you don't want your running back to be running that often every single game. But if it wins you games, man, I mean, who am I to say anything, right? Joe Mixon, obviously still showing that he has some juice in the tank and he's still a really good running back. We cannot let him get going. If we can get pressure on CJ Stroud and we can stop that run game, we make the Texans one-dimensional. And if we make them one-dimensional, they become very beatable. Keep in mind, CJ Stroud is still a really young quarterback. He is very good, but he's young. He has not seen everything yet, like a Patrick Mahomes or an older quarterback like a Kirk Cousins. He still has a lot to learn too, and I think we can force CJ Stroud to make some rookie mistakes, younger QB mistakes, if we can stop Joe Mixon and we can get pressure. And the third key to the game, attack the Texans via the pass. Like I said, last week they shut down Jonathan Taylor. We do not have a Jonathan Taylor on our team. DeAndre Swift is nice. He's solid. He's no Jonathan Taylor. I don't feel confident in our ability to run the ball against the Texans D-line, especially since we don't even have our fullback healthy for this game. So we have no choice here. We have to attack them via the air. We have to attack the pass game, their pass defense, I mean. And like I said, Derek Stingley struggled last week. We need to take advantage of that. DJ Moore, looking at you, man. You got to go ahead and beat this man deep, just like Alec Pierce did. And we need Caleb to really take advantage of their struggling pass defense. And then for the fourth key of the game, Shane Waldron, man. Shane Waldron, look at me. Shane Waldron, please play your best player. Stop overthinking this, man. I get it. I know. You came from a Seattle offense where you revived Geno Smith's career. I get it. But there is no universe in which Gerald Everett should be getting more snaps than Cole Kmet, a man you just extended, by the way, who Ryan Poles just extended for 4 years, I believe. And he's getting less snaps than Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett's solid. He would be a tight end number 1 on some teams, but not on the Bears. Not on the Chicago Bears, man. Play Cole Kmet. You do not need to see this Gerald Everett. Maybe 12 personnel just because Odunze and Keenan might be out. But in terms of snap count, Kmet should be on the top every single time. He is by far the better player. I don't care in what category. He is much better than Gerald Everett. This is no hate towards Everett. I love the kind of tight end he is, but he's just not better than Cole. We need to put our best players out there, man. And same thing with the running backs too, man. We should not be having, a Velus Jones, or last week it was even our fullback that had more snaps than Khalil Herbert. Involve Herbert, man. He's still a really efficient running back. He may not be better than DeAndre Swift, but he's still really efficient. Maybe on his offense, he's better than Swift. We don't know, but not if he doesn't get like, 2 runs a game. We need more than that, man. Come on. And then the last key to the game, it kind of plays into my third key of attacking the Texans' air, but Caleb needs to target DJ Moore and Cole Kmet excessively. I don't feel confident in the Texans defense that they can go ahead and stop DJ Moore for 60 minutes of football and Cole Kmet. Now, this falls on Shane Waldron actually playing his guys and playing the best guys. But like I said, Derek Stingley, their supposed best corner, struggled last week. Caleb, take advantage of that. Look at your best receiver in DJ Moore in his prime. He can absolutely cook Stingley. I really feel confident in that. And Cole Kmet, I don't think they have a linebacker that can cover Cole Kmet for an entire game as well. Shane Waldron needs to scheme up these guys to get open, and Caleb needs to look at these guys, especially if we're going to be out Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. You definitely got to target those 2 guys. Let's not play cute here. Let's not be stupid. We've got a really good receiver and a really good tight end. Sure, it might not be a Laporta or a Tyreek Hill, but it's still really good top of the line receivers. We need to be able to use them and attack a weak Texans secondary, a struggling Texans secondary with those 2 guys. So now on to my final prediction, guys. Who do I think is going to win this game? And like I said, guys, it's going to be a very tough game. The Texans are on top of the world essentially right now. Pretty much Super Bowl contenders, to be honest. And it may be a week 1 overreaction, to say that, but CJ Stroud is just a really good quarterback. And there's just a lot that went wrong for the Bears last week offensively, to where I can't really say I feel confident in getting in a pretty much potential shootout with CJ Stroud. So that is why I have the Bears losing 34-20. And I know you're probably thinking, damn, that's a lot of points. But keep in mind, if the Bears struggle offensively like they did last week, which is very likely considering it's Caleb's second game ever, it's going to be hard to contain CJ Stroud for that much longer. Once the game starts to get rolling, and once CJ Stroud starts to get rolling, he's not going to make the same mistakes that Will Levis made. He's going to continue putting the foot on the gas, and they're not going to let up. D'Amico Ryans is going to absolutely destroy us. And if it gets out of hand, man, it's going to get out of hand. I could honestly see them scoring more points than 34. Honestly, if we don't get going and we suck like we did last week, this score could look a lot uglier. But that is my prediction, just because we have a really young quarterback and a new team with new chemistry, and Shane Waldron didn't scheme up a good scheme last week. So I'm really looking at 34-20. But let me know if you guys agree with that. Let me know in the comments down below some of your score predictions. Bear down, I'm out.